What up, fool? Mark.
Lloyd Avery II was born on June 21st, 1969, in Los Angeles, California, to his mother, Linda Avery, and his father, Lloyd Avery Sr., along with his 3 siblings. He grew up in Baldwin Hills, also known as the Black Beverly Hills, and Lloyd's parents made sure that their family lived good. They had a swimming pool in the backyard, and they had everything that they could ever want. According to Lloyd's brother Shay, he said that they were silver spoon kids. They never needed for nothing. The kids went to the best schools. The parents were very hands-on in their education and making sure that they had Christian values. His dad, Lloyd Sr., was very religious, and he tried to pass that on to his kids. And it seemed like Lloyd Avery came from an all-American family. His friends were kids of celebrities such as Quincy Jones and Smokey Robinson. He attended Beverly Hills High School, where he had a reputation of being somewhat shy, but also outgoing, and a ladies' man as well. He excelled in sports. He was good in water polo and a great baseball player. After he graduated from high school, Lloyd would attend a technical trade college, but he would quickly drop out, and this would cause him and his dad to bump heads because his dad wanted him to follow in his footsteps and become a plumber, an electrician, or an expert carpenter, making a good living. But that's not what Lloyd wanted to do, and according to his mom Linda, what Lloyd Sr. wanted is not what Lloyd Jr. wanted, and it caused a lot of friction between them because Lloyd Avery's passion was producing music and making beats, but his dad was completely against it. And one day they got in an argument that was so bad that his dad took a baseball bat and broke his drum machine as a way to stop him from making music. But this would lead to Lloyd's first ever arrest because he was caught stealing equipment from a Guitar Center store in 1990. But not too long after being arrested, things began to go his way because an old friend of his by the name of John Singleton was making a movie, and the name of that movie was Boyz in the Hood, a coming-of-age drama following the lives of young black men as they try to navigate the dangerous streets of South Central Los Angeles. John Singleton wanted to use actors from the LA area to give the film a more genuine vibe, and Lloyd Avery was one of the people that he chose, even though he had never acted before. And through Lloyd Avery, he also met a man by the name of Brent Rollins, an art designer who would go on to create the iconic logo for the Boyz in the Hood movie. And even though his character was only credited as Knucklehead number 2 in the film, he still played a very important role as a part of the gang that killed the character of Ricky Baker, the star football player with a promising career. John Singleton wanted this scene to be perfect no matter what, and he was very meticulous on the way that he coached Lloyd Avery, from the way that he popped out of the window, from the way that he held the gun, all the way to the cold stare when he pulled the trigger, was all orchestrated by John Singleton. And it's said that on the day of filming, things got off to a bad start because Cuba Gooding Jr. is considered a method actor, and he was in his trailer getting into the mindset of somebody who's gonna see their best friend be murdered. And as Cuba Gooding Jr. was walking on set to film the scene, Lloyd Avery said something to him, and Cuba Gooding Jr. responded by saying, "Don't you fucking talk to me right now." And the two got face to face, and people who were working on set had to get in between them in order to prevent a fight. So the buildup was already there, and John had done such a great job building the tension within the film between the characters of Doughboy and Ferris. He knew that if he could get this scene just right, it could become iconic. And that's exactly what would happen. And it wouldn't just change black cinema, it would forever change film in general. And it would also forever changed the life of Lloyd Avery II. Boyz in the Hood was a box office hit, and it was nominated for multiple Oscars, making John the youngest and the first black film director to be nominated for the award, and it would make him one of the hottest up-and-coming directors in Hollywood. It would make superstars of some of the lead characters. Nia Long, Cuba Gooding Jr., Morris Chestnut, Ice Cube would all go on to have great careers in Hollywood, but they weren't the only ones to benefit from the success of the Boyz in the Hood movie. Lloyd Avery had become somewhat of a celebrity. A lot of people would recognize him from the film because his role was so memorable, even though it was very brief. He started getting VIP in the club, he signed with a talent agency, he began to get guest spots on different TV shows like Dookie Howser, and his music career began to take off too. With the celebrity he got from Boyz in the Hood, he was able to make connections within the music industry, and he would go on to produce a song for Tisha Campbell, better known as Gina, from the TV show Martin. In 1993, she released an album, and it reached number 37 on the US Billboard charts, and Lloyd Avery was one of the producers. Not only that, his good friend, John Singleton, had another movie lined up for him, and it was titled Poetic Justice, starring Tupac Shakur and Janet Jackson. He would be credited in this film as Thug Number 1. Not much of an improvement from Knucklehead Number 2 in Boyz in the Hood, but at least he was able to get his younger brother a role as Thug Number 2, the guy standing next to him in the arcade, and he would pretty much play the same role that he played in Boyz in the Hood, an antagonist that would kill an innocent man. And even though this role was small as well, John Singleton had plans to cultivate him as a talent and slowly bring him along and give him bigger and bigger roles. And although Poetic Justice would go on to become a classic within the black community, upon its initial release, it was a commercial failure, and it received poor reviews from critics. And critics weren't the only ones not feeling this movie. It's said at the world premiere, as the credits began to roll, Lloyd Avery just stood up amongst everybody and yelled out, "Man, John, that shit was whack," which definitely put a strain on their relationship. After the release of Poetic Justice, Lloyd Avery's talent agency would get a lot of calls about him, offering auditions, but it was only one problem. Lloyd Avery wasn't showing up to auditions, and if he did, he wouldn't even know his lines. People in the industry began to talk, wondering about what was going on with Lloyd, and it was rumors that the gangster life he lived on screen, he began to want to live that life off screen, and it was affecting his career. And according to Malcolm Norrington, who played in Boyz in the Hood as a member of Ferris's crew, he said when they were filming, Lloyd was very shy and meek. It wasn't nothing street about him. So when he started hearing that he was in the gang life, it just didn't make any sense to him. Lloyd would begin to show a pattern of very bizarre behavior. It's said that one night at a club, he maced popular MTV VJ Downtown Julie Brown after a verbal altercation. And then Lloyd would leave his upper middle class home and relocate to the Jungles, a notorious neighborhood in South Los Angeles, known for its strong affiliation to different blood gangs, and also known for where Denzel Washington filmed his memorable scene in the 2001 film Training Day. He began to rep Black P Stone, and he would show his allegiance to the jungle by getting it tattooed over his eyebrow. And according to Baldwin C. Sykes, who played the role of Monster in the Boyz in the Hood film and a friend of Doughboy, he said that he felt like Lloyd Avery went the way that he did because he got respect in the hood for what he did on screen, being a blood and killing somebody. And how would he know that he got respect for this? Well, he said he got that same respect for using the AK during the retaliation scene at the end of the movie. He said people would come up to him and give him props, and he would have to remind them that I'm just an actor and that's just a movie. It's not real. But for Lloyd Avery, it was very real. His younger brother Shay would also follow in his footsteps of joining a gang. He would become a member of the Rolling 60s Crips, and eventually he would be sent to prison for 4 years. And while his brother was away, Lloyd would focus on building his reputation as a feared blood, and his acting career was all but over. He wouldn't be seen in another film until 1996, Don't Be a Menace While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood by Keenan Ivory Wayans. He had an uncredited role. He had burned all his bridges in the industry, including one of the most important ones, John Singleton. It's said that he insulted John on multiple occasions, and eventually he had to distance himself from Lloyd because of his erratic behavior. And the same for Quincy Jones Jr. He said that he was good friends with Lloyd, but sometimes he would call him up in the middle of the night just talking about crazy stuff, saying things like, "I'm the king of the streets. Ain't nobody out here harder than me," like he had something to prove. Quincy Jr. said he would try to calm him down, but it was no use. Lloyd was out of control, and eventually he would have to cut him off too. Lloyd's younger brother Shay, who had followed his path into the street life and joined the gang and went to prison, was released in 1997, and he had decided to renounce the gang life and make a change. And he was hoping that his brother Lloyd would follow, but it wasn't to be. And even though his mom and dad was still there, trying to do everything they could to help him, Lloyd still seemed lost and out of touch. And according to his aunt, Carol Avery, she would try to get him back into church and closer to God. He began to go, but he usually wouldn't go inside. And whenever he did go inside, he would leave before the word of the day. His aunt said it seemed like the devil was holding him back from hearing something that he needed to hear, and he would be forced to leave his beloved Jungle's neighborhood. It said that he got into an altercation with somebody in fear for his life, and the same day that the altercation happened, he would leave the Jungles. He began to live with just random people that he would meet, but a lot of times it would end due to an altercation. And one person that he was living with, it said that he got into it with their mom and he maced her. Eventually, he would find his own place, a supply office building with little rooms for rent and a shared bathroom. He was now living off of small residual checks from the films that he had did years earlier. He worked at a car wash and would sell small amounts of drugs on the side. But Lloyd didn't have to live this type of life. His family was still there for him, but this is what he wanted. This is what he chose. And it's also said that he had a very extreme addiction to sherm, also known as PCP. In February of 1999, he would make his return to film in a movie called The Breaks in an uncredited role. But the gangster persona that had taken over Lloyd's life would reach its apex on July 1st, 1999, near Santa Barbara Plaza, because an altercation broke out between Lloyd Avery and Annette Lewis and a man by the name of Percy Branch. It's said that it all happened over a drug day, and during the argument, Lloyd Avery took out a .45 and shot Annette Lewis multiple times, then shot Percy Branch in the stomach. Annette Lewis would die at the scene from her injuries, and Percy Branch would die 3 weeks later from his wound. And you would think after committing a double homicide that you would go into hiding, go on the run. But Lloyd, he didn't really hide. He would leave the state, but it wasn't to get away from the murders. It was because he was offered another acting opportunity in a Master P film called Lockdown. So 13 days after committing a double murder, Lloyd Avery was on set in an abandoned prison in New Mexico filming. But despite the opportunity, Lloyd would continue to have problems. He got into multiple verbal altercations on set. He got caught stealing. He got caught smoking sherm multiple times, and he got into fights, including with actor DeAndre Bonds. It got so bad that they had to start cutting some of his scenes because he was just too much trouble on set. And one day he got into it with a makeup artist by the name of Melanie Mills, and he tried to physically attack her, but Master P's entourage intervened. They jumped him and kicked him off the set. Lloyd began to run down the road away from the abandoned penitentiary where they were filming, but he was running towards an active penitentiary dressed as a prisoner, and for some reason he jumped the gates. Alarms were going off, sirens were going off. All of the guards drew their guns on him and were about to kill him. But the director of the movie Lockdown had to come vouch for Lloyd and tell the guards to stand down so they wouldn't shoot him. It was complete commotion. Eventually, they got everything cleared up, but the state of New Mexico still wasn't happy. They escorted Lloyd to state lines, and he was barred from New Mexico. But despite all the craziness that happened while filming the movie Lockdown, Lloyd Avery returned to Los Angeles very optimistic about his career, and he had good reason to be, because his next film would be his first leading role, playing the character of G-Ride in the film Shot.
Yeah, you know it. Where the fuck you from? Hollywood area? Let's get something straight here, Wood. You can roll with us, but under one condition. You don't take no flicks on my crew, and no flicks that's gonna get your ass killed. Do you understand?
But it would continue to be issues for Lloyd Avery. According to the director of the film, he demanded to be called G-Ride off camera as well, and he demanded to be able to take his prop gun home. He would carry it around like it was the real thing. And according to people that worked on the movie, he threatened to kill the director on multiple occasions. But Lloyd Avery's wild ride was about to come to an end. And one night in December of 1999, while Lloyd was staying with his grandmother in Beverly Hills, he was chilling with his younger brother Shay, who had once followed his big brother into the gangbanging lifestyle but had made a change. And they were just sitting, talking about life. And according to his brother, during that conversation, Lloyd just looked up and said, "You know what? I had a good life, man." In the fall of 1999, wanted posters would go up for Lloyd Avery, and he knew that it was only a matter of time before he would be caught. And in the early morning hours of December 8th, 1999, as he slept on the floor next to his grandmother's bed, he heard the police coming. He then went to his brother's room and gave him a hug, told him goodbye. He went out the back and got on his BMX bike, made his escape. He would ultimately be caught and arrested for double murder, but while awaiting trial, he got back close with God. He started to read the Bible every day, and he would take it with him to every court appearance. But he would be convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. His nickname in prison was Baby Jesus because he was always preaching and talking about the Bible. One day, he got a new cellmate by the name of Kevin Roby, a man serving life for the brutal assault and murder of his own sister. He had been in solitary confinement for years and was usually isolated to one-man cells because of his violent past and multiple assaults on other inmates. But for some reason, prison officials decided to put Lloyd Avery and Kevin Roby in the same cell, even though they were complete polar opposites. Lloyd Avery was a devout Christian, and Kevin Roby was a devout Satanist. And on September 4th, 2005, according to Kevin Roby, once he arrived in his cell, Lloyd Avery began to talk to him about Christianity and tried to convert him. And this would cause an argument, and that argument would turn violent, and Lloyd Avery would be beaten and choked to death. Kevin Roby would hide the body under blankets on the bed, and for the next 11 body counts, corrections officers didn't realize that Lloyd Avery was missing. The only reason that he was found is because Kevin Roby drew a pentagram in the middle of his cell and placed Lloyd's body there. He also drew satanic messages on the wall using Lloyd Avery's blood. It was a very horrific scene, and when asked in court why he performed a ritual on Lloyd Avery, Kevin Roby called it a warning to God. Lloyd Avery's family would attempt to file a wrongful death lawsuit against the prison, but after the NAACP legal team and legendary lawyer Johnny Cochran both refused to pick up the case for the family, they ended up just dropping it. Some family members of Lloyd Avery feel like he had undiagnosed mental health issues. It could have been the drugs, or it could have been him getting lost in a character that he played in the movie and never finding his way back. It's a cautionary tale of life imitating art with very tragic consequences. And Lloyd Avery, he was only 36 years old when he died. Rest in peace, man.